The wind cut through me like knives, snow swirling so thick I could barely see the porch light. My belly was heavy, swollen with the life I carried, every step crunching deeper into the storm. I was 7 months along, shaking, soaked, my coat too thin, boots leaking. I thought maybe, just maybe, if I reached their door, they'd let me in. I knocked, then I pounded. The door cracked open and the warm glow of the kitchen spilled out. My mother's face appeared, sharp and irritated, her silk robe tied neat at the waist. Behind her, I saw the glow of the fireplace, the sound of laughter, the smell of stew. It was a world I had been banned from the moment I refused to hand over every paycheck to fund my sister's luxuries. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I tried to speak, but my lips shook so hard it came out broken. Please, it's freezing. I can't. I pressed a hand to my belly. The baby. Just let me inside. Her eyes narrowed, and then she smirked. Do you hear yourself? She sneered. Dragging your mess to our doorstep like some beggar. You should have thought about that before you spread your legs. Mom! My voice cracked, panic rising in my chest. I'll sit by the door. I don't need food, just warmth. Please! He's moving. He's kicking so hard. I'm scared. From behind her, my father's voice boomed, thick with contempt. What's she doing here? Didn't I tell you trash doesn't survive winters? The words hit me harder than the wind. Dad, please! I cried, stumbling forward. The snow pushed against me, trying to swallow me whole. If not for me, for him, for your grandson. That's when my mom leaned closer, her face lit cruel by the kitchen light. She whispered it so only I could hear, but I'll never forget. If the baby freezes, it saves us diapers. And with that, she shoved me back into the blizzard. The door slammed, the lock clicked, and I was left in the dark again, snow clinging to my hair, my eyelashes, my skin burning with cold. I sank to my knees in the drift, one hand over my belly, the other clawing at the snow. My breath came out in violent clouds, my body trembling so hard it hurt. Inside, I could still hear them laughing, my sister's high-pitched giggle, my father's mocking grunt, my mother's smug little chuckle muffled by the thick walls but still loud enough to brand into my bones. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw at the door until my fists bled, but I couldn't. The baby shifted inside me, a sharp kick against my ribs, and I knew I had to save us both. I stumbled away from the porch, the snow rising higher, my legs growing heavier with every step. The world blurred, white sky, white ground, white storm, until all that existed was cold and the sound of my own ragged breaths. I thought about sitting down, closing my eyes, letting the snow bury me. It would be easy, peaceful. No more laughter, no more cruelty, no more begging. But then I pressed both hands to my belly and felt him move again. No, I whispered into the storm, my teeth chattering so hard the word cracked. Not like this. I kept walking, past the house that had thrown me out, past the porch light that glowed like a taunt in the dark. My boots slipped, my fingers burned, my breath tore at my lungs, but I didn't stop. Every step forward, I whispered to him, to myself, I'll get us through this. I'll find a way, I swear it. By the time I reached the edge of the road, my vision was dim, stars flickering at the edges of my sight. I collapsed against a wooden fence, clutching the icy rail, my dress soaked through under my coat. That was where I realized the truth. They wanted me to die in the snow. They wanted my child gone before he even drew a breath. And in that frozen darkness, I made a promise, not just to survive, but to rise, not to beg ever again. I would make sure that the same people who laughed at me, who tossed me into the blizzard like trash, would one day feel a cold even deeper than this storm. And when it came, there would be no shelter for them. When morning came, I woke in a stranger's barn. The storm had dulled to a bitter gray, but the cold still gnawed at my bones. A farmer and his wife had found me half frozen against the fence and carried me inside. They'd wrapped me in blankets, lit a fire, pressed hot broth to my lips until I could breathe again. "You're lucky you and that baby made it through," the woman whispered, brushing snow-crusted hair from my forehead. Her eyes were kind, but they were heavy too, as if she'd seen the cruelty in the world before. I wanted to thank her, but all I could do was sob, my chest shaking with the weight of everything I had lost. For the next few days, I stayed with them. They didn't ask questions, not really. They gave me a bed in the loft, a pot of stew, and silence when I needed it. I looked at the frost still etched on the windows and thought of the warmth my parents had kept from me. I thought of the laughter I had heard through those walls as they left me to freeze. At night, when I pressed my hand to my stomach, I whispered to my unborn son, "I won't let them win. I won't let them erase us." By the end of the week, I knew I couldn't stay forever. The couple had their own mouths to feed, their own lives to carry. So I thanked them, hugged them, and walked out into the thin winter sun. I returned to town, but not to my parents' house. Never again. Instead, I found work at a diner washing dishes, then waiting tables when they realized I showed up early and stayed late. The pay was scraps, but I saved every penny. My belly grew heavier, my back ached, but I carried trays and scrubbed plates and smiled faintly when customers tipped a little extra. I lived in a rented room above the diner, drafty and small, but it was mine. And every time I heard laughter, drifting up through the floorboards from the customers downstairs, I remembered the laughter in my parents' kitchen, and I sharpened my resolve. They thought tossing me into the snow was the end of me, but it was the beginning. One afternoon, as I walked home from work, I saw them. My mother and father, strutting down Main Street with Jenna clinging to Mom's arm, her nails perfect, her coat new. They were smiling wide, chatting with neighbors, playing the perfect family, and when their eyes landed on me, their smiles widened into sneers. "Still alive?" my father called, loud enough for half the street to hear. "Thought the snow would have taken care of you by now." Mom laughed, tossing her scarf over her shoulder. "Maybe next winter." Jenna smirked, her eyes scanning my swollen belly. "If that baby doesn't kill her first?" People chuckled, not knowing what to say, the sound burning into me all over again. But this time, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just looked at them, really looked, and saw cracks. My father's shoes were scuffed. My mother's jewelry was smaller than the gaudy pieces she used to wear. Jenna's laugh was high, but her eyes darted nervously, like someone waiting for approval. They weren't invincible. They were slipping, and I knew it. That night in my rented room, I pulled out a notebook and began writing again. Not just memories this time, but plans. Step by step, I laid out everything I knew about them. My father's temper at work, how he bragged about cutting corners, my mother's obsession with being adored by her church, Jenna's endless hunger for attention, for validation, for things she couldn't afford without my father's wallet. They had thrown me into the storm. They had left me for dead. Now I was going to build a storm of my own, one they couldn't lock out, one that would seep through the cracks in their perfect walls until they were the ones shivering and begging for mercy. And this time, there would be no farmer's barn, no warm blankets, no kind strangers waiting for them. Only the cold they once wished on me. Winter had given way to spring, then summer, but the cold never left me. Every morning when I buttoned up my uniform at the diner, I remembered the sting of snow on my cheeks. Every night when I climbed into my drafty rented room, I remembered the way their laughter carried through the walls as they locked me out. The baby was born in late July, in that same drafty room with no family by my side. I screamed into the sheets, my body shaking, but when I held him, tiny and pink and alive, I knew I had beaten them already. He was the proof they hadn't killed me, proof that their storm hadn't buried me. But revenge is not just survival. Revenge is letting them taste the same cruelty in a way that burns deeper because it mirrors their own. It began in winter again, almost a year later. By then, I had saved enough to rent a bigger place. I had a crib by the window, blankets stacked neatly, a heater humming. My boy slept soundly, warm and safe. And as I watched him breathe, I remembered my mother's words. "If the baby freezes, it saves us diapers." That was the moment I knew what had to be done. I didn't need to ruin their reputation. I didn't need to scream their secrets into the street. No, I would give them exactly what they gave me. When the first blizzard of the season hit, I waited. I knew their habits. Every year, the same routine. Dad dragged wood in for the fireplace. Mom simmered stew. Jenna wrapped herself in fur-trimmed coats she hadn't paid for. They were comfortable, arrogant, certain they could outlast anything. But storms don't care about arrogance. I had quietly paid attention all year. Their roof leaked. Their pipes were old. The back door never latched right. They ignored it, too smug to fix what wasn't visible. The night the storm raged hardest, I went to their street. Not to knock, not to beg, but to watch. Through the frost on the window, I saw them sitting around the fire, laughing. My father poured whiskey. My mother stitched something by the firelight. Jenna posted selfies in her coat. They looked untouchable. Until the lights went out. The storm snapped the power lines like twigs. One moment their house glowed, the next it was swallowed by darkness. I waited. At first, they lit candles, still laughing. But when the wind howled harder, when the temperature dropped further, I saw the cracks. They weren't prepared, not like they had always bragged. The leaks in the roof dripped. The drafty back door shook against its frame. And then, as I watched from the shadow of the trees, I saw them do something I never thought possible. They stepped outside. My father's voice carried through the wind. Maybe she'll open the door, just for tonight. I froze, every vein in my body humming. They weren't talking about neighbors. They were talking about me. Because they knew where I lived now. They knew I had heat. They knew I had survived. And there they were, my parents, my sister, trudging through the storm toward my little rented home, the same storm they once shoved me into. I opened the curtain just enough to see their faces lit by the snow. Pale, desperate, their clothes not nearly warm enough. Their lips blue at the edges. They knocked. Once, twice. Then I heard it. My mother's voice, trembling, nothing like the sneer I'd known. Please, just for the night. It's too cold. We'll freeze out here. Behind her, Jenna was shivering, hugging herself, eyes wide. My father's jaw shook as he tried to keep his pride intact, and in that moment, I remembered everything. The porch light, the shove, the words. If the baby freezes, it saves us diapers. I stepped closer to the door, my boy sleeping warm behind me. I pressed my hand against the wood, close enough that I could almost feel the vibration of their fists as they pounded. Again. Then I whispered through the crack, my voice steady. Now you know what it feels like. Silence. Just the wind. Then I pulled the curtain shut. I didn't open the door. I didn't need to. Because the storm was my revenge. The same storm they once trusted to finish me was now theirs to face. As their voices grew hoarse outside, begging, pleading, cursing, I curled up beside my son in the glow of the heater, warm and safe. Finally free. For the first time, I slept soundly through the night. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.